Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!
Welcome to Flat Earth Debate. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you're new to the channel, or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support this channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they're live, but there's also a link in the info box below the video once it's rendered. But most importantly, if you would like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the shape of the Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcomed back on the next stream. Please also share the show. Sharing increases the live audience, of course, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel. So please share the show. And one last time, if you're new to the channel or you've not done so already, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell notification icon to keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. Now we are joined by Ranty. Who else we got? Mark, Sleeping Warrior, Adam, Chocolate Saying, and Arwin. How are you all doing?
Doing the best.
All doing good.
Nice.
You.
So, about that MetaBunk curve calculator, Mick, what are you going to do about it? Ballers, are you going to denounce it because it's completely and utterly fallacious, misrepresentative and dishonest? Or are you going to turn a blind eye to it because you're all as dishonest as each other? If it was me and I made a mistake, what would you guys be expecting me to do? What would I expect Nathan to do if it was Nathan that made the mistake, or indeed Jaren? So come on, where's the intellectual honesty? Where's the correction, the admission, the concession? The curve calculator MetaBunk thing is broke.
Yeah, it doesn't account for angular size reduction at distance, i.e. it fails to account for the very real, observable fact that we have perspective in the world. Every single time a camera is used, every single time someone videotapes something, every single time they open their eyes in the morning, they observe perspective. And yet, it's ignored in globe calculations. They present you with a third-party perspective, a side elevation view of the observation taking place. The observer and the target kept equidistant from your new observation position, hence keeping all the target and the viewer height at the same size, even though obviously something in the distance is going to get considerably smaller. This is not factored for. This is not accounted for. It seems to be an outrageous oversight by the ballers who until now have used this calculation, mostly by a site called MetaBunk, produced by a man called Mick West, who has ignored perspective. And this calculation has been used time and time again to claim, using a presuppositional value of r, a radius value which is in no way scientifically valid, they have used this calculation to beg the question that Earth is a sphere. And the reality is, even the most obvious and observable nature of our reality, perspective, has been totally ignored. Outrageous.
Yep.
And if it was a flat earther that had done it, it wouldn't be tolerated. So why should we accept no action? Why should we accept people turning blind eyes? It's nonsense. Let's get it all changed so we can test the shape of the Earth with some correct maths. Isn't it funny that they all take the piss out of us for not being able to do maths, yet they've all been living the biggest possible mathematical mistake ever? Oh, the hypocrisy.
Because we're going to batter the living daylights out of any baller that comes in today. So the link's been public for both shows and, decidedly absent from ballers because they know what's going to happen to them. But I'm happy to address some of the chat comments. For example, Kuhn Rich, Nathan, we know there is a perspective, but do you know how to calculate angular size? This is totally irrelevant. You don't account for it, you idiots. That's our point. You don't account for it in the maths. You put the person who is making the observation as a separate entity. It's not just you and the thing you're targeting as an observation, what you get from a camera, what you get from a photograph or a videotape. No. We get to see the observer making the observation.
I think there's they appear to be trying to attack the credibility of the inclusion of this stuff.
Absolutely.
And what I'm just gonna read the angular size calculator. If you go to it, there's some worked examples after it.
No, I don't think it is an angular size reference, because angular size gives you a distance, a number, and an angle. I'm not sure that that's the correct way to do it. I think it might be something to do with the height of the object, and the distance equals a reduction subject to a scale ratio. I'm not sure that angular size is the correct.
Well, it doesn't matter whether you use angles, minutes, seconds, degrees, or whatever. Really, you can then calculate that. But the point I'm making is it is a real inclusion that needs to be there. I'm just going to read the first example. A tennis ball is 2.5 inches in diameter. At what distance would it have to be so it would have the same angular size as the moon of about 30 minutes of arc? So it's asking you to solve so that you can represent that small small tennis ball. How far away from you does it have to be so it looks the same size as the moon? And it's those factors that need to be calculated if you are going to analyze a perspective photograph. That's
I love concise explanations when they're met with silence.
What?
Absolutely spot on, Adam. That's it. If you hold your thumb up, you can obscure the moon. Does that mean if you are a heliocentrist that your thumb is bigger than the moon? No. Just means that you have an angular size reduction with the moon and your thumb, or the tree and your thumb, or the tennis ball and your thumb, or whatever it is you can obscure because it's far enough away to have a big enough angular size reduction for your tiny thumb to obscure it. Simple. It's something that a 5-year-old would get.
You must have massive thumbs to obscure the moon.
just put them near your bloody eye.
I know. I get perspective. I understand it. What's interesting, though, is that Sean Hufford claimed yesterday that he's going to do an experiment that proves that the net effect of orthographic view and perspective view achieve the same results. Well, that means that you deny that objects get smaller as they go into the distance, Sean, you Burke. So let's look forward to this up-and-coming experiment from Sean, whatever that experiment's going to be. And whatever conclusion he comes up with, let's laugh at it. We can dismiss it literally with ridicule, because if you're going to argue that the net effect of perspective over orthographic gives the same results, then you think that the objects don't shrink over distance. What a moron.
Also, can I just add that, Sean, please don't misuse the word experiment. You won't be performing an experiment of any degree. If you had an experiment, you'd have a hypothesis. If you had a hypothesis, you'd have a dependent and independent variable. And if you had all of those things, you might, if you were observing a phenomenon, actually be adhering to the scientific method. Just don't use this terminology. You're going to be looking at a few graphs that beg the question. That's what you'll be doing.
What was that saying when we were kids? Don't use words that you don't understand. Experiment. Sean, don't use it.
Yeah, let's just be a bit more candid with these idiots. Don't use words you don't understand, Sean, you muppet.
Shawnee.
That's my favorite one right there, the Muppet.
I think it's a bit like when I'm not sure who brought their maths on screen the other day, but it's always useful when they bring it and you are able to have a good look and see what is missing. So I'll look forward to seeing this one and seeing how he explains it or tries to pass it off as a double dip. I would expect that's the argument that's going to come, that there is no need for, as they're calling it, a double dip, but as we're calling it, no, accounting for perspective and the curvature as well. Count them both, because they're two different things. You can't, as you've been doing in the past, kind of pull the wool over people's eyes and imply it's the same thing. So I bet that's what we're going to get.
Yeah, but when we ask someone like Alan, well, why? I don't just reassert your position, give us an explanation as why we should ignore the very real nature of reality. Things get distant in the smaller. Things get smaller into the distance. There is an angular size reduction with distance. Well, if you're going to ignore that fact, we need a damn good reason why something that every single person with eyes observes, that will be ignored. Why? And we don't get an answer. We get, well, because it's not needed. Well, why isn't it needed? Well, because it isn't.
Yeah, that's just baller nonsense. Battered globe syndrome.
Yeah, we're battering them with simple perspective.
The other odd response I heard, Nathan, the other day was, it might have been Wiggles. He kind of came on, got into the confessional box, gave a full confession, and then laughed it off instantly at the end. I wonder if there's going to be a bit of that. Whether that was him clearing his conscience because he had to verbalise the truth, and then do it at the end. But that was another odd response that we're getting to this. All of it's intellectually dishonest, and none of it's, as we were alluding to earlier, we're trying to get to the truth. We don't know what it is. We don't purport to know what it is.
No.
But these guys really do seem to be struggling. Like with Alan, somebody will have to tell me, or with the Dawn, if somebody else says it is, then that's fine. And they don't seem to be honestly being scientists or applying any kind of scientific evaluation to what they're looking at. They're just looking for the nearest bit of flim flam that allows them not really to analyze it and just say, no, it's all okay. It's all okay.
They're emotionally involved with it rather than being cold and clinical.
I think it's because every day they come in here and they're expecting one of their proponents to provide some evidence, something that will shut flat Earth down completely. And every day they get whatever arguments they bring, they slowly just get destroyed. And I think it's discouraging them. Which is cool because they kind of just need to wake up out of it anyway.
I thought
At
Wiggles
least
was
enough
very
to
telling.
look at the evidence.
Wiggles was very telling because he basically, he cleared his conscience, admitted, because the more intellectually honest people with a better argument came after him and said, yes, of course we don't account for perspective. It's not in the calculation. It's not a viewing function. And he suddenly realised that his spurious calculation is flawed. That's why he took it off instinctively when he first had it up. But he had to get that off his conscience. So that's what he did. And then he said, we're all twats because we're flat earthers and we haven't passed 10th grade geography or something to that effect.
He called us a twat.
Yeah, twat means twat in America.
Oh, right, okay.
Yeah, that was it. He said we haven't passed 10th grade geometry, therefore we're idiots. It's like, what are you talking about? We've just pointed out that the maths you came with a big grin on your face to tell us about how wonderful it was and how it accounted for everything perfectly has been found to be massively flawed, and the only argument you've got is, well, my teacher told me.
Yeah, and again, it's another prejudice they apply to us all, don't they?
Yeah.
I'm sure I'm probably more qualified than all of them put together mathematically.
It's scientism. They say, oh, we don't understand it, but then when we point out that we do understand and that there's a flaw in there, they just panic, and they just prove to everyone that they're the ones that don't really understand. They just learn something by heart. What is typically the education system? Just learn it. Don't actually critically think about it. Just learn the mechanism and use that. Don't think about it.
And regurgitate it all day, every day.
It gets worse. When they're challenged, they do the same. We've started calling that, or John Sturgeon constantly calls it rinse and repeat. So you repeat what you've just asserted and it's been demolished. And you just repeat it again. Start at the beginning. If you can put in enough obfuscation in between that first question being asked and it actually being repeated at the end with the same assertion that's been debunked, if you've got enough obfuscation in between, some people won't even notice.
How does it apply to the sun?
Right, get a lot of obfuscation so that people don't notice you're dancing around the fact that you don't include perspective in your calculations. That to date, they've all been wrong. You haven't applied a very critical factor, the fact that things get smaller in the distance, something everybody observes. You've not included that. So you telling me in the chat that, oh, well, we know how to calculate angular change. Well, why don't you apply it then?
Are we live again yet, by the way?
Yeah, been live for about 15 minutes.
In 50 minutes?
15?
Yeah.
No, we are live and have been for 15 minutes, are we?
Oh, again. That was a quick break.
In the meantime, I've just uploaded that black hole video.
Get it up. Let's have a look, because that's interesting. Because you can get this effect over and over again, and it's another one that completely debunks the dip angle, the theodolite measurement of the horizon. Because of the consistency, you can get this black hole.
That's true. I mean, I've been every day pretty much and captured it. So let me get the. If I can share sounds, should be able to, shouldn't I?
I don't know if you need sound for it. It's very much
Well, yeah, I
visual
actually
thing.
speak in it as well, which is quite funny.
You can
I'm actually
verbalise it now.
referencing that I could say that it is actually a black hole, and people,
Yeah.
if they didn't know any different, couldn't believe
You've got a mic in front of you. Here we go.
Right, let's see, where are we?
Been a very quiet couple of shows. Do you think all the Globers are just regrouping right now, Anthony?
No, I think they're all calling it a protest, but actually it's like when they call it curvature and it's actually some form of obstruction that might be any one of a number of things. It's like what now they're probably boycotting the show because they got nothing, but they're passing it off as Nathan's a twat. That's probably what they're doing.
They do struggle with the real meanings of words. I'll give you that.
Right, so Ranty's got this up on screen now, and I'm just going to grab my desk so I can put a line on it. So there's if you look on the left-hand side where this pier is, there is obviously I can't get it exactly right because Ranty's camera is not exactly perfectly level, but this black hole in the middle is cut or dissected straight down the middle by the actual horizon. So that's the convergence point, which is why you have a refraction underneath both the pier. I assume that's a pier on the left. You can see the bottom part of it. I'll use my mouse for now. So on the bottom part of the pier, you can see the top part being reflected with the refraction line, the mirror line, the fold line, whatever you want to term it as, running straight through the middle. But we've got something that's a levitating black hole right in the middle. I don't know if you want to take over from here, Ranty, and just zoom in and
sure.
do your thing.
So as I zoom in, if I was to say, I could upload the video and put it on one of those viral video things and say black hole over Blackpool. And if you didn't know any better, a lot of people would be sucked into believing that there was actually a black hole over Blackpool because that's what it looks like. Clearly it's not. It's just the rock. Its image is being directly copied. So if there was a line through there, that's the rock. It's a bit out of focus because of the haze, the heat haze. And underneath, it's just reflecting itself, and it's also reflecting the sky underneath it. So it kind of cuts it all off and makes it look like it's floating.
If I showed you the maths, right, could I convince you that it's just a time portal created by the Hadron Collider?
Do you know what? If you put maths to anything, I'll believe it if you say it.
With enough presupposition, my friend, you can just tell us that 2,000 years ago someone did some experiment that proves it, and then just presuppose everything you need to make your assertion make sense, and I'll buy that implicitly. I'll gobble it down, especially if it says it on TV as well.
I think what we should start doing is, instead of calling him Eratosthenes, let's start calling him Jeranism instead, just to rebel. Mind you, we can't because he was claiming the shape of the Earth. But let's not call him Jeranism. That was a bad idea. But we need to rename this guy, because can you imagine if a flat Earther got two sticks in the ground and made any claim on it whatsoever? How well do you think that would go down for the ballers?
Harry Dirty Knees, that's what we should call him.
It just defies belief that this is the accepted proof for the sphere that we're supposed to live on. Oh, well, he only calculated the radius or the diameter or the circumference or whatever it was that he actually calculated. Who cares? Well, the maths works out both ways, guys. That's the point. So
you got to watch out for the third stick in the ground at the same time, though.
Why do you have to watch out for the third stick?
Well, Ruhif, maybe 3 or 4 months ago, tried to trap us on that the third stick should have a corresponding angle to the flat Earth and the sun being only 3,000 miles away.
Yeah, so let's see the evidence that it does then. And what he'll do is he'll pull out a piece of software and model it and claim it. But let's see that it happens in real world. It's like saying that the stars in the southern skies prove that we live on a ball. Well, how's that so? Well, all you got to do is all three look south, man. proves that we're on a celestial sphere, man. All right, so let's accept the logic. Can we see the evidence that looking south in two different places in the south yields the same results? Prove that you're looking south. Prove that you see the same stars. It's not that difficult, is it? Guess what evidence doesn't exist, yet they all believe it anyway.
You've used a red herring there by going to the stars. I said about the third stick.
I didn't mean it as a red herring. I was
No, I'm just being devil's advocate here.
Just explain that third stick thing. So I have a problem with this experiment as well. But
well, the assumption is that the sun is in a specific place at any one time, and if you set 3 sticks along the ground, you get the 3 different angles, and those 3 different angles can't work on a flat plane. They can only work on a circular plane. That's their argument, not my argument. That's their argument. But the presumption is that the sun is a fixed mass in the sky, and that's where you have to sort of hold them to. Well, you're making the assumption that the sun is a physical ball of fire in the sky at a certain distance away.
So what's your problem, Adam?
Well, they've done this thing, haven't they? And then they've gone to another city 500 miles. It's Syracuse or something. And at the same time of day, they've measured the angle difference, haven't they? And it's 500 miles away, and they've worked out. And I think that's absolutely genius. But my problem is, how back then did they coordinate local time in Syracuse to Alexandria to know that it was midday there?
They had mobile phones.
That's what I'm saying. How do you did they go across those 500 miles with an egg timer?
Gravity.
Do you see what I mean? How do you localize?
You're quite right. It falls right there at that point.
And I think what he means is, how do you work out the longitude and latitude back then?
No, because that's you can back work it, but you haven't got them because you haven't got all those calculations. What I'm saying is, the basic experiment is they're 500 miles apart, and at the same time of the day, they make measurements. How did they know in Syracuse what time of day to take their measurements when it was midday in Alexandria or whatever the two cities were? How did they go on the internet and go like when we were doing sun tracking? Right, everybody go outside now and take a reading.
We couldn't coordinate it right now. I would highly doubt that we would have the ability to do that even now.
Yeah, we would.
With no technology.
We've got milliseconds of delay on these hangouts. So yeah, we absolutely could do it now without any trouble whatsoever. But I think the point is 2,000 years ago, with a very limited communication network, what are you going to get donkeys to tell the person at the same time? What are you going to do?
Yeah, you didn't hear me, Nathan. I said without our technology.
Sorry, I missed that. My bad.
So if we were trying to replicate what they did with no technology, just the technology that they had, the horse and cart or whatever, how would we do it? I don't think we could.
I want to disagree.
We could do it today, though. I mean, if you just take that the line of longitude that we're on at the moment in the UK, with the same as in Portugal and the same as the Canary Islands, we could put 3 sticks, couldn't we? One in Birmingham, one in Lisbon, Portugal, and one in the Canaries. Yeah,
but that means that the angular, the exact position of Lisbon, because where they tell us it is, may or not actually be where it is. The only thing that we do know is that within England, we can get from Scotland, the tip of Scotland, John O'Groats, down to Land's End, and that's maybe the only way we could do it, because we don't know. Once you go over any elements of water, it's not easy to know exactly what bearing you're on, because a lot of the times when you go over the oceans, you have no bearing reference. Oh yeah, we got WGS84. Yeah.
Okay. Let's get somebody in not Edinburgh, further up, Aberdeen, somebody in Carlisle, and somebody in Bristol. That's pretty much a straight line.
Somebody down Cornwall. That's not going to be too difficult to get. Somebody in Birmingham, Nathan, and then somebody up in Scotland way, Dell maybe, and then just see what happens at midday and measure the distance.
You can't do it, can you? Because they all, as Ruhif's using it as a flat Earth disproof. It is true that they don't triangulate the positions of the sun. Dr. Zach a few years ago did a great one, 3D kind of plotting it and showing that 2 will match up, but 3 won't.
Correct.
And I think reality is it's because of, would probably best describe it. What we're seeing is an apparent sun that's generated in the atmosphere, and where that renders is dependent on atmospheric conditions as well.
Agreed. Adam, so don't you think it's interesting that Ruhith thinks that three observers will prove the ball Earth? He believes that that's true.
He's got a presupposition about what the sun is.
Or he's got bias in favour of heliocentricity that much that he will accept it because it's logical, regardless of the evidence that doesn't even exist to prove whether it doesn't work. But he doesn't. That missing evidence isn't a problem for him. Well, for me, the missing evidence means that it's not true unless otherwise shown.
I just think you have to be careful about using the two sticks in the ground.
And like I said, I think it was a much more significant scientific experiment and achievement to translate local time in ancient times for them to be able to perform the experiment. I think that
deserves a bigger round of applause. The level of coordination to perform the quasi experiment.
Yeah, you're quite right.
Nathan, can I ask you a question? Because I know you're not backward at coming forward when you're talking about the financial means to why you do the YouTubing and such. But do TFR pay you money?
They owe me loads of money.
But do they actually pay you money?
Of course not. Why would they pay me money? I don't do anything for TFR. I think you'd be better off asking. Adam actually does do a radio show on TFR, so your question probably better directed at him.
Did TFR pay us? No, not well. You get a little bit, like $10, I think, Josh, a few months ago. It's none of this is done for cash. No, none of us do this for cash. I could invest my time a shed load better if I wanted to make money. Do you know what I mean? There's no incentives from anyone to anyone other than spreading the truth, and working together is not a sign of collusion. It's a sign of that we have a common goal.
Yeah, indeed. I mean, I was on TFR yesterday, so and also like A4 keeps on putting out that everyone's being paid by TFR, right? Load of crap, so don't believe it. And even if we did, would it matter? We're working at the end of the day. If we did get paid for it, everyone's working.
But they say that with such hypocrisy because NASA pay everybody to tell them what they want to hear.
Yeah. Well, not that we are. But...
The only people that TFR pay are the people that generate revenue on the program. So, like I said, the guys on Ironworks do some. Paul on the plane, Jaren, they all receive an income, but they all contribute to the shows that's put on the network.
What's up, Isa?
Yeah, what's up, everybody? How you doing? Yeah, I heard y'all played the song earlier too, and thanks for putting it in the link. You guys are awesome. Forgive me for interrupting.
Oh, Mick.
Although the Riley kind of did break the rhyme, that was a bit of a shame.
Hey, Rumpus.
Oh, there he comes.
Real quick before we get rumpused, what do you call it? I was thinking, what's interesting is like, the people, a lot of get flat earthers for trying to accuse flat earthers for getting together and like, trying to culminate some whatever it is. What I find interesting is that a lot of the baller trolls actually are organized. Like they're actually all in one Discord. They're actually like all in one location, whereas all the flat earthers are like discombobulated, can't figure out how to get their Discord to work, don't know how to use microphones. You know what I mean? Like, it's crazy. It's literally like it's like Star Wars. It's like you got the rebels that can't really get much going,
it's like
but
a den of goblins.
Well, okay. Okay. I just think it's fascinating,
Not blocked after all, then.
And shout out to Red Pill Philosophy out there in the chat. Big up the brother. He's a really big voice, and he's been shouting out how the globe is potentially like a religion, which has been very interesting to watch.
Get the guitar, boy. Get the guitar.
Hey, I know you like it. I know. You just mad because I don't have a song about it. It's not Alan B. Oh, yay.
Good afternoon, Alan. It's nice to speak to you.
Good afternoon. How are we doing?
Not bad.
What's up, Alan?
So, Rumpus, what can we do for you, mate?
Oh, I just thought I'd give you an opportunity to rescind your utter stupidity.
Offer decline.
There's no otters here.
It's utter with a U.
Yes, that's what I said. Oh, your hearing is obviously deficient.
Would you say it again for me?
Utter.
It did sound like you
There
were
we
saying
go.
otter.
Well, okay, it's your sound reproduction, or possibly could be my microphone, I suppose.
Putting the microphone right on.
Yeah, I mean, you guys, you really ought to be hugely embarrassed about the bollocks you're just dispensing here. I mean, in a few, I don't know how long it's going to be, a few weeks or a month or whatever, you're going to realise you're being very, 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 very stupid.
Well, maybe. What about you guys? Taking you guys 2,000 years to figure out. You don't have to. You have to account for the angular diameter, right? And what about Aristarchus? Aristophanes? Didn't he have it? Or Eratosthenes? Didn't he have a? Didn't he have, what do you call it? But he didn't have a solar filter, right? So how would he have been able to determine the distance of the sun if he didn't have a solar filter?
He wasn't looking at the sun. Goodness gracious, what the hell? He didn't. He was not looking at the sun.
Ridiculous, Rumpus.
Well, you are ridiculous. I mean, you're an idiot. If you think the so he's got he's
boring, boring.
Reality boring.
Reality's boring. No, just you, Rumpus. In fact, Rumpus, you do modern science such a disservice. I've had to argue for the ball because you suck.
No, you're an idiot. You don't need to argue for anything. I wish you'd stay with being a flat earther because you're such an idiot. You don't know what you're talking about.
What you do is patronize people.
Dude, I'm an American. You go back to your
because you're an arrogant twat.
No, because I know
and a rambling chipmunk.
I know
doesn't
so
really
much
have
more.
anything solid to
I
present.
know. This is Ice's idea of an argument. I think. You know nothing.
You're just boring, dude. You're socially inept.
Yeah, reality. Well, you might find reality boring, but I'm afraid that's
no. Just you,
Rumpus.
All you got is mass.
Told how reality works. Don't like being told how reality works. I think that's the basic problem.
Rumpus, how come they don't account for the angular diameter and the distance with the? How come you haven't corrected Mick West? What are you, just an idiot, or are you just stupid?
That's my question, Rumpus. Do you agree that the MetaBunk curve calculator is broke?
It's absolutely 100% correct, and I'll show you now. As I say, you're going to be embarrassed about this in I don't know how many days, or weeks, or months, or something or other. There's going to be a time coming.
Hey,
shortly.
Rumpus, do you even know?
I'm in the middle of a sentence. I'm in the middle of a sentence. I am in the middle of a sentence, and you're going to be very.
Nobody cares, Rumpus. You're done.
Can you let him speak?
I'm in the middle of a sentence. Taking turns, try and behave in a reasonable fashion for once.
What you mean, like you do? You mean?
I take it in turns. I don't interrupt you, Anthony, when you speak.
Oh, you interrupt everybody.
You just don't shut up.
Only when I'm
that's
being
the problem.
interrupted. Like CIS is doing it to me now. Right, you will be sometime in the next few days, or I say weeks, that you will realise how stupid you're being, and you're going to be embarrassed. Just like you're embarrassed at Ireland. Every single time you've
just asserted that twice, and I've asked you, Rumpus, why would it be that we're waiting a couple of days? Can you not assert now why we're incorrect?
Okay, I can. Yeah, I'll show you a diagram. I'll give you sort of because I think the only way.
While you're going to present your
don't jump down his throat. I'm asking you.
that we've been waiting on for
a
month.
being very unreasonable. I can't believe it's me having to tell you guys this.
Over a month.
Yeah, well, I'm afraid I've been a bit. Stop being a wanker, Arwin.
Come on, let's not descend into injustice yet.
See, being a wanker now. This is what you do.
No, you're a wanker.
No, come on, let's just keep the ad homs to the example.
And the only thing you
don't do anything. You just make false promises.
The only thing you've got,
and you ramble
the only thing you've got is your idiocy to base your.
Rumpus, the only thing the ball has is people like you right now, dude, and you suck at arguing for the ball. You're the worst argument.
So you've got no argument.
You admittedly have people on your side.
You've got no argument, Isa.
Dude, how come? Hey, Rumpus,
all you've got is abuse.
Hey, Rumpus, how come I got your physicist friend who you brought in to dismantle every argument you made 15 minutes prior? And he's a physicist. You're a dipshit.
You have no idea what you're talking about. You must have misunderstood.
No. You were on my show, and your physicist friend completely rejected every argument that you brought up when me and Cathexis put it to him. And so your physicist friend, none of modern science agrees with dipshits like you. You make it look horrible, Rumpus.
You don't know what science is. You're a
disgrace to numbers.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
You're a disgrace to numbers and mathematics.
You have no idea what you're talking about.
Sorry to interrupt you, Issa.
Rumpus,
we just want to stay on track.
You're a religious fanatic pretender.
Arwin,
you pretend like you're a scientist
hold on,
guy,
please.
and you're nothing.
Well, you don't know it, Arwin.
Arwin, Rumpus, I need to get this clear.
Arwin, from your behavior and your lack of evidence and your false promises.
Arwin, hold on, Arwin and Rumpus. I'm muting both of you so I can ask a question so we can get this back on track. Right, you've asserted that in several days or a month or some period of time, will be shown to be wrong, Rumpus. So,
No,
why would
no,
it be
you're
that
showing it wrong now, but you'll
you're interrupting
understand you're
me?
wrong, perhaps, in
Rumpus,
some
try to
detailed
keep the
time.
steam coming out of your ears. Wait for the end of a sentence. That might take breath. So just wait. I'm asking
Okay,
why would it take a certain period of time if we are incorrect? Surely you can assert why now.
Oh, I can, yes, absolutely.
Okay,
but the
please,
trouble is, you
hold on,
don't
just before you
understand simple
do,
things.
just for your benefit, can please everyone else on the panel let Rumpus give his explanation?
Wow. Okay. Right. Yes. The problem is not me explaining it. The problem is you understanding it. But I can give a little demo here. And I thought, let me share my screen here.
It sounds like a Just So story, this.
Yes. Here we go.
This
You're
is
already.
a waste of time because the show is
Come
only
on.
Because you're a moron. Yeah, you're a moron.
Rumpus.
You're not going to understand it, Isa.
Yo, you know, do you know what? Do you
you're
know
a
that
moron.
freaking
Sorry,
Einstein?
okay,
Yeah,
don't
wasn't
close your
Einstein?
brain,
Wasn't
Isa.
Einstein
Close your
called a
brain
moron?
down. This
Hey,
is part of the
wasn't Einstein called a
non-interruption. Is
moron?
this part of the non-interruption that I'm getting? Oh,
No, is this part of your
this
inability to
is the
shut up for 5
non-interrupting bit,
seconds?
is it? Is this the non-interrupting bit?
Isa,
Excellent.
Are you trying to get
So you're still non-interrupting me, are you?
I've
Excellent.
specifically asked him
Right,
for an
here we go.
explanation, Isa. Come on, let him give it.
I'm afraid this is typical. This is why no one's ever able to give you an explanation.
Get
like
on
Bruno.
with it, you
Right,
dumbass.
There you go. Is this part of the non-interruption again? Right.
Well, get on with it.
Right. Okay. So the problem is you don't understand how to go about generating a perspective view and its relationship. For a start, well, the first thing you don't understand is what an orthographic view. What we've got over here is an orthographic view. An orthographic view is a way of representing 3D objects in 2D to maintain dimensions and things. This is an orthographic view. So when every time you say that you've been presented with an orthographic view, you're wrong. It's not an orthographic view. This is an orthographic view. So what you people have been trying to present to you is something like this, which is called a cross-section or side elevation. This is a side elevation of a house. And I've chosen a house here because it's something that Nathan might be able to relate to, and perhaps Anthony or whatever. So the question is, because you don't understand the process of how you generate perspective view and the difference between that and the absolute dimensions of something, I thought we'd go through the process. And so you could see, because if I tried to get you possibly to think about how you do it, you might then see why you're being so silly. So here is a side elevation of a house.
Just
now,
before you go
notice
on, sorry,
that...
sorry, Rumpus, sorry, I'm really sorry to interrupt. Does this process that you're about to take us through apply to the MetaBunk or any other curve calculator that has been presented thus far?
No.
So I'll ask, why the hell are you telling us about it?
Dumbass!
Because I'm going
hold
to
on,
show you
Isa.
why it's
Hold
irrelevant.
on, don't jump down his throat. There might be an explanation for why he is about to take us through calculations of the thing we are saying is not in the calculation. Why are you taking us through this?
Because I'm going to show you why you don't want to include it in the MetaBunk calculator.
Okay.
Right. So what the MetaBunk calculator does is it deals with the absolute size. So let's suppose you wanted to find out the angular size of this. Well, let's start. Sorry. This is a side elevation of a house. So for instance, if I were to ask you, for instance, to get the plans or blueprint for something, an object, a piece, some shelves, a house, your car, you would present me with a diagram, something like this, a side elevation, which has the absolute sizes of things in it. Nothing to do with an
Sorry,
observer.
I just got to interrupt one more time. I'm really sorry, Rumpus. When in this debate have we ever presented you with a side elevation?
Right, well, that's because you don't understand how to do perspective.
No, I'm
so that's why
sorry,
I'm going to
that's
show
not
you
my
why you need it.
question. When have we ever presented in the debate a side elevation?
Well, Ranty did it just yesterday when he was showing side
No,
elevations.
he
of
showed a
mountains.
perspective view. It was of things going left to right as a comparison, but it absolutely contained perspective. There were things getting smaller into the distance.
He didn't. He drew some mountains. Okay, let me show you what Ranty drew.
I'm sorry,
He drew
you still
something
haven't
like-
answered my question, because the
I
answer
have.
to
Ranty's
Ranty...
presented.
Sorry,
Okay, I'll
you have
draw
not
what
answered my
Ranty drew.
question. Shut up and listen to the question again, because clearly I'll use your ad hominem style. You're too stupid to understand the question. So close your mouth and listen again. Why are you asserting that we have presented side elevation view when it is
you
only...
have.
Listen, close your mouth and open your ears.
Get on
It
with
is...
it.
No, listen, Rumpus. I
Get
know
on with
you've
it.
got OCD. I know
Get
you've
on
got
with it.
trouble with this. We know. We understand your retarded
Ranty has done
nature.
this.
So
I'll
I'll
show you what
speak a
Ranty drew
bit
the other day. I'll show you
slower
what
just
Ranty
for you.
drew the other day.
Rumpus, I don't want to
Give
have
it-
to mute you. I'm going to ask you again. Why are you asserting that we have presented side elevation views when every photograph in history is a perspective view?
Because the MetaBunk thing does not present you with photographs, and that's why it's irrelevant. And Ranty did draw...
I'm sorry, we are comparing photographs to the calculations that the MetaBunk spits out in comparison to photographs. So I'm asking, why would it be necessary to exclude the nature of perspective? That is my question, Rumpus. If you can close your mouth long enough to actually answer the question.
Dear. I will explain all of that in a second. If you just give me a moment, there's a couple of increments to this, and I will talk about photographs and perspective in a second. But I need to set the first step. So, for instance, here is a vague reproduction of what Ranty did the other day, which he drew two mountains. I'm just going to, excuse me if these are a bit crap.
I'm sorry. No. I've got to stop you there. We never compare Ranty's drawings to the MetaBunk curve calculator.
No, I know, but you said he'd never presented a side elevation. I was
No,
just trying...
the photographs we compare to the calculations are not drawings that Ranty makes. This is a straw man argument, right? So let's just drop this crap that we are presenting side elevations to make comparisons in the calculation. We're not. We're using photographs, you retard.
When Ranty presented a diagram of some mountains, he drew a side elevation with two mountains on it.
Right,
and an
we are
observer.
not inputting Ranty's drawings into the MetaBunk calculation, are we?
But,
No, we're not, you dumb retard. So I'll ask again for the third time. Why is it that you are asserting we are using side elevations when we are comparing calculations to photographs that include perspective?
That's a secondary operation. I'm trying to get you there, but you're not letting me get you there.
No, the secondary, is this secondary operation included in the curve calcs?
No, it's not.
That's our problem. Do you get
I'll
it, dumbass?
explain why, but you haven't let me. You haven't.
No, it
barely
doesn't
let me
matter
have
why.
2 sentences.
Your explanation is irrelevant. It does not include them. Your calculation does not account for perspective.
Correct. And I'm
right. That's all we need to know. Perspective is a very real way of life, and your calculator does not include it.
Right.
Yes, right. Your calculator doesn't include it, but it's a way of life. It's absolutely spurious. It's an absolute perversion of reality. Why the hell are you using it?
Because you need the absolute values of things to work out what the angular size.
You don't include the angular size. That's the point. What part of retarded are you?
Nathan, if you just wait a moment, you'll get an explanation. You said you wouldn't interrupt me, but you are doing it all the time.
It's because you keep explaining how to calculate an angular size, and our issue isn't the ability to calculate angular size. It is the ability for your calculator to spit out an apparent hidden measurement without accounting for this.
You do not need to do that unless you wish to present a photograph or an image.
We present a photograph and then we compare it to the mathematics. That is exactly what we are doing. You are claiming it is a secondary function, and yet we have never had it disclaimed by any globehead ever that this secondary function needs to be applied. You're now taking us through the secondary function, even though it's not included in the mathematics.
Because I'm going to demonstrate it's not necessary.
It is absolutely necessary. We observe perspective when we click our camera.
Hopefully we'll all accept that if you were presented with the blueprints of your house, it would look...
We are not examining blueprints to a house. We are examining photographs. That is why I established with you that we are not presenting any side elevations to get calculations on curvature from, you idiot!
How you do the perspective transformation. So
the transformation is not included in the MetaBunk curve calculation, is it?
It will. I'll show you.
Don't stutter. You've already disclaimed it. This calculation that you are trying to take us through is not included in the MetaBunk calculation.
I'm trying to provide you. I'm trying to save you some.
You're just stuttering while I tear you a new asshole. That is what you are doing.
I'm trying to save you from your own idiocy.
I'm not an idiot. I understand that we absolutely unequivocally observe perspective, and we are not using side elevations of houses when we compare our photographs, and you fallaciously use a calculation to describe how much of that photograph should be hidden or obscured by Earth curve when it does not include an angular size reduction.
I'm about to demonstrate why the perspective calculation is not necessary to the MetaBunk.
It is necessary. It is necessary because we observe it in everyday life. For you to descend to the retarded level of Alan and Dougal off Father Ted is beyond me.
I'm about to demonstrate how you calculate that, Nathan.
I'm not interested in how you calculate angular size when it is not included in the calculation you have fallaciously asserted will demonstrate how much we should or should not see of something that has not had angular size accounted for.
To calculate angular size, I'm about to show you how to do it.
I don't care how you do it. It is not included in the calculation. How many times have we got to go around this circle?
The angular size is calculated and where
I don't care. It's not included in the calculation.
I'm about to show you why not.
It's not, because it's needed and necessitated, but not included.
Later, the MetaBunk calculator tries to give you the absolute size of the...
We're not interested in the absolute size when we only capture the apparent size in a camera. Are you really this stupid? We're not capturing the actual size of the mountain when we click a photograph. We take the apparent size, something your calculator does not account for. It only accounts for the actual size. That is the very nature of our problem, you complete retard.
It's not trying to emulate a camera. That's why
it is trying to emulate a camera. That's precisely what it is doing when you use it in comparison to a photograph. That is precisely the function you are using it for, fallaciously. That is our issue, you
and I'm
dumbass.
About to show you how it works to generate...
You're just stuttering. You're just stuttering while I tear you a new asshole. You're a disingenuous liar. You're either retarded, which I don't think is the case, so I'm going to assert that you're just a liar. You understand implicitly that our world is subject to perspective, yet you don't account for it.
Stop reality breaking through. If you give me 60 seconds, I will show you.
Show me
let
what?
me demonstrate to you.
Show me what?
Is
That you don't
going
need
on.
to account for perspective in the calculation he's
I will
presenting.
demonstrate how perspective is calculated.
I don't care. It's not included in the calculation. You calculating it as an afterthought when you haven't once done this in any of the debates just shows how disingenuous you are. You're a liar, man.
Anthony would like to hear my explanation, so can we let Anthony at least...
Rumpus, can you
one thing I'll give
perhaps
Anthony,
present something that's actually relevant?
it is absolutely
keep
relevant, but
going on with a side profile view of a house, the very issue we are highlighting. You've still got it on screen. Not once have we ever done curve calcs on a side profile view of anything. It's an impossibility. You can't capture a side view with a camera. You can only capture a first person view with perspective.
Right. Do you accept it?
What do you mean, yes, but this, but? Yes, that's correct, you dumbass. We always have perspective. We always have a first-person view from a camera. We never present a side elevation because that's an impossibility. Your x-axis becomes your y-axis when you go 90 degrees adjacent to it. You simply do not factor the perspective into your calculator. You trying to show me over and over again whilst talking over me that you can calculate it thereafter. Shut up. Shut up. Shut up. Stop talking over me.
And I will show you how that happens. I still haven't had 30 seconds uninterrupted.
That's because you're an idiot and you keep asserting again and again and again that it is not necessary to include perspective when all we ever present, when factoring in the mathematics you fallaciously assert, prove curve, all we ever do is present photographs. Not once have we ever presented a side elevation because that is a impossibility. You can't take a photograph from this perspective. This is only applicable in diagram format, something we would never, ever calculate for.
Delightful silence.
Are we still here?
Nice. Thank goodness. Gosh.
Yeah, let's sit in silence while Rumpus digests this.
Storm.
It's like holding on to a pole. During a hurricane and shit.
Man, but that's the thing is like, yo, this is what I...
Hold on. Why are we not getting an answer from Rumpus? Why does your curve calcs not account for something that we observe in everyday life, and you are continually just attempting to show us that you can calculate it hereafter?
Because it doesn't need to.
No, let's just sit in silence and we will sit and watch Rumpus on mute.
It needs to explain how perspective works because that's so relevant to answering the question. No, it's not.
Come on, Rumpus, what you got?
He got muted.
You're in a bad mood today, Isa.
You know.
No, it's all right. It's piped up. You've asserted this yesterday, Alan, that it is not necessary to include this calculation. So now I want you to tell me what you asserted yesterday.
He's fucking fiending.
Hold on, P. Alan, you asserted yesterday that it was not necessary to include the angular size reduction at distance.
And I won that argument. Thank you very much.
No, you didn't.
No, you didn't. You obfuscated him.
You just said it wasn't necessary because it wasn't necessary.
We got
and
another
asked for an
Charlie
explanation.
Zelenoff on flat
Now
Earth
that
over
raging Rumpus has given up, I want you to tell me why it's not necessary.
I told you yesterday. Put
Tell us
Rumpus
again.
back on. Stop muting him and let him speak.
I'll do what the hell I like. Do you understand that, dickhead?
I'd like to hear what he's got to say, to be honest, Nathan.
Yes, I would as well. Stop muting him.
Yeah, but you know he's gonna take 50 minutes and calling
Well,
us
you're all
morons
talking
all
about
the while and not actually answering the question. Because that's what Rumpus does.
The question
Because he's
is
a rambling
simple.
chipmunk.
Why is perspective not included in the mathematics?
Just let him speak.
Can you present me for a moment, Nathan?
Sure.
Okay. Thought I made a good picture of Rumpus.
That chipmunk's probably smarter than him.
Haven't had an answer to my question, Alan. Why is it not necessary to include an angular size reduction when accounting for observations?
Because it doesn't need to.
That's not an answer.
Right, here we go. I really ought to be able to finish
Sorry,
this.
I've just asked this question to somebody else since you gave up.
No, I didn't. I was muted by somebody.
Yeah, to get my question in without you interrupting me continually. Then I stopped and you just stayed on mute. Now I'm asking Alan.
Right, so you're not interested. So you want an explanation, but you don't want an explanation.
I
you
asked,
want a sense of reality.
I asked,
Right.
and you continually asserted, without addressing it, that you were presented with side elevations. So are you going to retract that?
I'm going to demonstrate what perspective's all about because you don't understand perspective.
but that's not
My
relevant.
question is, why is it not included in the curve calculations, Rumpus? So telling me how to calculate it when it's not included in the mathematics is nigh on irrelevant. Do you understand that?
Your argument revolves around the lack of perspective calculation in the MetaBunk calculator.
That's correct. There is a lack of perspective calculation in the MetaBunk calculation. That's correct. It does not account for perspective.
Correct. And it does.
Right, that's correct. It does not account for perspective in the MetaBunk curve calculation.
I'm about to demonstrate why it is why it is not necessary.
Just stuttering, that's what you're doing, while I continually, every time you stutter, I'll interrupt and point out that it is absolutely a functionality of every single camera ever used in existence ever. So while you just stutter, I'll assert it to my audience.
You're right. So am I being given more than 30 seconds to speak? Right, great. So when you want to work out the angular size of something, which is very similar to the perspective calculation, it's not quite the same, but it's very similar. So we'll work with the angular size of something. How do you do that? First of all, you start off with the absolute size of something. Then you include in your viewer, which is this chappy I've got here, and then you include in the triangle. This is something Alwyn obviously won't understand. Then you want to work out what theta is. So that is the angular size of this house. But you have to start off with the absolute size of the house. If we want to know what the photographer will see through his camera lens, he will effectively, theta is doing the perspective calculation for him. So it's effectively theta that you will see in your camera. So it's a secondary operation. Once you've got the size of the thing you're trying to deal with, then if you put your observer in, you know the distance to the thing you're looking at, you can then work out the angular size. So the point is, the procedure is first, get the absolute size of things. Secondary, you then work out where the observer is relevant to the object you're looking at. Then you can work out what theta is. I won't bother going through the calculation so Alvin won't get confused, but it's basically a tangent.
Can I ask Rumpus, why is it you're not giving us the perspective maths and you're giving us the angular size instead?
Well, it's very, very similar. The angular size and the perspective is very similar. I mean, if you want me to...
The angular size, not perspective.
Sorry, say again, sorry?
Why is it you're giving us the angular size?
Okay, shall I do perspective then? Okay, if you don't like angular size, I'll do perspective. Exactly.
I'm sorry, just now you've come to the end of that. Thank you very much for that demonstration of how you calculate angular size, giving us a perspective view, as we called it. What did we misterm it as? An orthographic view as opposed to a side elevation. Thank you for that correction. just now explain to me the original question, or give me an answer to the original question. Why is that you have just explained not included in the maths when you have presented photographs to compare to those maths?
Because the MetaBunk calculator does not try and draw you what an observer sees. It just gives you the absolute size of the house. So,
sorry, why has it been used to compare to photographs of what we absolutely do see then? That's a little bit confusing. Sorry, can you just let me get in my question? I'm a bit confused because quite often we show photographs which do include this function. So why would it be that you... Sorry, can you just let me get to the end? You seem to be continually interrupting me, Rumpus.
Go on.
Why would it be that we have had a comparison by you using this calculation and not including this secondary function?
Because when I get round to the photographs, I do the secondary thing, but that's a thing you do with the MetaBunk information. I've
never seen you ever account for an angular size reduction when using the MetaBunk curve calculator to show us how much should or should not be seen. That is a complete and utter lie. What? That is a lie. You have never ever made this correction and added the angular size to any of the assertions that show us how much should or shouldn't be seen based on a photograph when compared with these calculations. You are lying.
Right.
You are lying.
When I do operations...
Sorry, you are lying.
Oh my God.
You are lying. You have not ever included an angular size reduction when you have asserted how much should or should not be seen when comparing photographs to the MetaBunk curve calculator. You have never done that. That is a lie. Either admit that you are lying or retract your lie, but I'm going to hold you to the wall on this point indefinitely. You are lying.
That's fine. I'm perfectly happy for you to hold me to this point. The way I calculated, for instance, when I was looking at those images, I have to take into account the zoom factor because the
zoom factor is not the angular reduction at distance. That is something different. Why are you now offering us this straw man? You, as I have just asserted, have never accounted for the angular size reduction at distance. The zoom is something entirely different. That is not the angular size reduction at distance. Why are you now straw manning us instead of conceding that you have just lied? You do not account for the angular size reduction at distance. You use the calculator and then tell us how much should or should not be seen in the photograph we present based on that calculation alone.
Rumpus, shut the hell up.
The angle is dependent on the zoom, and so there's no point in me doing this angular calculation. I had to do it a different way.
No, that's a conflation of two different things. We are talking about an angular size reduction at distance, i.e. perspective. This is a straw man. Why are you straw manning the hell out of us?
I had to work out the zoom value.
That's not the angular size reduction at distance.
I had to work out the zoom value.
Why do you keep rinsing and repeating that you're calculating the zoom value? Why don't you acknowledge what I'm saying?
Because doing this operation, working out the angle, doing this, is not what you can do to work out what Anthony was seeing, because I didn't know his zoom value. So that's why these operations are not used, and I had to go and use a different method to work out the pixels per degree, because I didn't know what zoom value Anthony was using.
That doesn't address what I've just stated. Time and time again, without making that calculation adjustment, you have asserted, using a photograph that you are presented with, how much should or should not be visible.
Right. And the way I've done that, the first value I did was to get the absolute value. For instance, let's suppose talk about shell egg point or some Snæfell or something. You use I don't use the MetaBunk calculator. I use Mo, but it's very similar. It gives the same results. You work out the absolute size, just like you work out the absolute size of this house, and then I know the distance. And I could work out what the angle is, but unfortunately, because I don't know what Anthony's zoom value is, you can't work out what theta is. So what I then had to do
hold on. Let me just clarify. So hold on. Let me clarify.
Just another 10 seconds.
Stop.
And I had to use another method to work out the zoom value.
Stop talking. I have a question. So at that stage, you don't account for the angular size reduction because, according to you, you don't know the zoom level, correct?
Yes, I can't work out the angular size without...
Right! We finally get to the confessional. You do not account for the obvious and observable reality of our world, that things in the distance get smaller.
Of course I do.
You've just said
And
you don't.
Nathan, I can do the calculation. Can you?
Yeah, here we go. This is what we get. Obfuscation, misdirection, and lies. Yeah? He's just asserted, circle jerk style, that he can do the calculation. As soon as he admitted that it wasn't included and he couldn't do it, blaming it on the fact that he hadn't got the zoom value, he's now reasserted that he does, rinse and repeat, lies, misdirection. This is what we get from ballers. You're a bunch of liars. That's all you are, Rumpus. You're just a liar.
I understand as much more about reality than you do your child. That's how different.
You understand?
It doesn't matter. You don't include angular size reduction at distance in your calculation. You've admitted it. I don't care that you've rinsed and repeat. I've spotted it. So will the audience. You admit it. So does every other globehead that's been on this panel. Teary-eyed or whatever we get from Wiggles, he's admitted it too.
You don't know what you're talking about, unfortunately.
I know what I'm talking about. You've admitted it. Wiggles has admitted it. Ruhif has admitted it. You all admit it. You don't include perspective in your calculation. This is a sad, sad day for globeheads. You guys have all been duped, and the liars who dupe you are on the panel right now. Rumpus is one of them. He's a liar. He's admitted to lying. He knows he doesn't account for the very real nature of perspective, and he will continue to reassert the lie like any fraud that gets caught out. He'll just keep asserting the lie over and over again.
What's the formula for perspective, Nathan?
And he'll ask me if I understand something that doesn't get included in the calculation. Why are you asking me if I understand the formula for this? I only need open my eyes to observe that things in the distance get smaller. And yet, on this show, within minutes, you have included the fact that you don't account for it. You've blamed the fact that you don't have the zoom value. Every other person who has come on that's intellectually strong also admits that you don't include an angular size reduction in your curve calcs. This is terrible. This is bad. You've been caught, man. You're busted.
Nathan, you don't understand perspective, and I'm happy.
I do understand perspective. I open my eyes and I look out my window and things get smaller, yet your calculation says they remain the same size, and you don't account for it. You've admitted it, like every other globehead who's come on here. We know what you've done. You've co-opted the fact that things get smaller into the distance. You've rearranged it and called it curvature.
Formula for perspective. If you understand it so well, please tell me the formula
Stop
for perspective.
interrupting me.
We know how it works. The formula is just a
You don't.
side note.
No,
Stop
it's just a
interrupting
side
me.
note.
Not knowing how the formula works doesn't change the obvious and observable reality that someone else who doesn't understand how the formula is constructed for perspective can recognise what I say is true. You don't include that in the calculation. That's the bottom line here. You don't include that in the calculation. That's disgusting. It's an outrage. It's the reason your globehead friends have all got it wrong with the calculation. Now you can claim disingenuously that you've calculated per pixel something or other. It doesn't mean that you actually have accounted for the angular size reduction at distance. You haven't. You admit it. You all admit it. You've all been caught. Mick West is the biggest liar of them all because he's used it too. So you're all busted. And this is going to get rammed down your throats from now on every time somebody sees an observer on screen and the observation on screen, because we obviously aren't looking down the eyeballs of the person who's making the observation. And believe me, that'll be the picture on screen when someone digs out these curve calculations. They'll be telling you that what you've got in your camera is obscured by a certain amount of Earth curve based on a calculation that does not account for angular size reduction. It's absolutely pathetic. This is how you've all been duped. You're busted. You understand it? You are totally and utterly busted. And we're going to keep ramming this home indefinitely. And with that, I'm going to say first and foremost a huge, massive, enormous thank you to all of the debating panel for making this debate possible. And of course, a massive, huge, enormous thank you to all of the live audience for tuning in. If you hated this show, you know exactly what to do. But if you liked it, maybe consider sharing it. Or subscribing if you've not done so already. I've been Nathan Oakley, and I will see you all in the next video.
Oh, what a day! What a lovely day!